All right, so not a fairy tale today, but an actual story from history from the Tang Dynasty of China around 600, 623, long time ago. This is the story of Pingyang, the princess who led an army. You don't take down a corrupt emperor all on your own. As a general's daughter, Pingyang knew this well. So when her father and her brother were struggling to combat the emperor's army, she didn't wait around to become war booty. She raised and commanded her own army of more than 70,000. With her help, her father was able to take the imperial throne and start a dynasty regarded as the golden age in imperial China. Oh, did I mention she did all that before the age of 20? Pingyang was the daughter of General Li Yuan, a garrison commander in 7th century China who controlled a substantial army. Li Yuan didn't exactly want to be a rebel leader. He was a distant cousin of the reigning emperor, but he was influential, powerful, and ambitious. And for that reason, he eventually found himself in the sights of the paranoid emperor of the Sui dynasty, Yangdi. Yangdi remains, even today, one of the great mustachio-twirling villains of Chinese history. He murdered his own father to secure the throne, and, once there, squandered his country's money and military might on failed expeditions to conquer foreign lands. He also used what was left of the treasury to finance expensive building projects for his own glory. Now broke, he raised taxes, but no one could pay them. Yangdi had conscripted all the able-bodied men for his army, leaving too few behind to farm and earn money. In 613-614, his overburdened people began to revolt, just starving peasants at first, but the rebellion soon spread to opportunistic nobles and government officials. Terrified, Yangdi began to imprison or execute anyone he found suspicious. Yangdi had been wary of Li Yuan, and with good reason. Sure, it was concerning that Li Yuan was an ambitious general with a strong army. But more worryingly, Li Yuan supposedly sported a birthmark in the shape of a dragon under his left armpit, an obvious sign he was destined to be emperor. Yangdi's suspicions were further confirmed in 615, when a popular street ballad making the rounds foretold that the next emperor would be named Li. Since Li was one of China's most common surnames, the prediction could have meant just about anybody. But Yangdi was pretty sure he knew which Li posed the greatest threat. In 617, Yangdi gave the order to imprison Li Yuan on the pretext that the general had been caught having sex with not one but two of Yangdi's concubines, a capital offense. But Yangdi was forced to rescind the command when he fell under the threat of rebels and needed help. Li Yuan, of course, saw which way the wind was blowing and realized he had two choices: seize the moment and rebel openly, or be crushed in the emperor's panic. He chose rebellion. Aided by the neighboring Eastern Turks, Li Yuan pulled together an army of more than 30,000. He sent secret messages to his son, Li Shimin, and his son-in-law, Cao Shou, Pingyang's husband, informing them of his plans. That made things for Pingyang and her husband a bit tricky. They were living at the emperor's court, where Cao Shou was the head of the imperial guards. Cao Shou told his wife of his plans to sneak away and join her father's rebel army, but he worried she would be in danger after he left. There was no doubt she would be. Yangdi was more than capable of holding Pingyang hostage or harming her to get back at her father and husband. But Pingyang wasn't the type to faint or fret or wait around to be tossed in a dungeon. She told her husband she could take care of herself, and a few fraught days after he left the palace, she did just that. Pingyang made her way to her family's estate in the province of Hu. There she found the people starving. Not only was war afoot, but a severe drought had brought widespread famine. So Pingyang opened the food stores to the hungry masses, an act that forever endeared her to them. It also indebted them to her, a clever move for a woman who would soon need to raise her own army. Just a few months later, Pingyang's father's forces and those of her brother were embroiled in a bloody conflict with the emperor's army. Realizing that survival depended on superior numbers, Pingyang wanted to augment their troops with her own. She started recruiting soldiers from among the people she'd just saved from starvation, enlisting the fittest and ablest to join her so-called Army of the Lady. Then she cast a wider net, reportedly ordering a young servant to try to convince a local highway robber and his merry band to join her cause. She then sent out other servants to track down additional bandits and asked them to join her as well. Why these brigands agreed is unclear, but Pingyang did have the benefit of being on the side that seemed likely to win. She made alliances with the largest and most capable of the disparate rebel groups operating in Hu. She even convinced imperial allies to desert Yangdi, including the emperor's prime minister and a general with more than 10,000 troops under his command. Within months, Pingyang had amassed more than 70,000 troops under the banner of the Army of the Lady. They swept through the countryside and went on to take the capital of Hu. Pingyang's keen public relation instinct served her well as a general. She made her soldiers swear an oath not to pillage or loot the villages they captured. Even more surprising, after their victories, the troops distributed food to the territory's inhabitants. As the story goes, people saw the Army of the Lady as liberators, rather than just a horde of ravening locusts. Her ranks continued to swell. The Army of the Lady's escapades in Hu forced the emperor to send troops to deal with this brave woman warrior. She roundly defeated them, enabling her brother's and father's forces to take down the bulk of the emperor's army. Less than a year after she had fled the court to join the rebellion, Pingyang, along with her father, her brother, and her husband, marched with their forces on the imperial palace in Daxingshang. The emperor didn't stand a chance. Gazing in the mirror as his country burned around him, he reportedly said to his empress, "Such a fine head. Who will be the one to hack it off?" Yangdi fled south before the approaching armies, abandoning his palace and his throne. In the end, he wasn't beheaded. He was strangled in a bathhouse by his own advisors in 618. Li Yuan swept into the palace and became the new emperor, establishing himself as the first leader of the Tang dynasty, still regarded as a high watermark of imperial China, taking the name Emperor Gaozu, or High Progenitor. One of his first acts was to honor Pingyang as princess and bestow on her the status of marshal, a rank that came with its own military aides and staff. Barely 5 years later, Pingyang died. The details remain unknown. She was only 23 years old, so the likeliest prospects are illness, death in childbirth, or, given that this is imperial China, assassination. When her father planned an elaborate funeral, complete with military honors for the daughter whose courage and bravery had helped bring him an empire, his court asked why he would bestow such an honor on a woman. Li Yuan responded, "She was no ordinary woman." In Pingyang's time, Chinese women of all ranks enjoyed a bit more respect and freedom than women in other contemporary societies. Emperors' wives, for example, were often their husbands' acknowledged political advisors. But Pingyang was unique. In her day, women might exert control from behind the scenes, but jumping on a horse to command an army was extraordinary. Had she lived, she might have someday been empress in her own right, As it was, her father abdicated the throne in 626, just 3 years after Pingyang's death, and her brother became Emperor Caizong. Although punctuated by a series of rebellions and civil conflict, the Tang is regarded as the last of the great Chinese dynasties, a golden era of military might and beautiful poetry. Pingyang was the PR-savvy warrior princess who helped make it happen. The end.